There we go. All right, so good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's session. I'm really glad that you could join us. This week, we've just had different arts educators sharing their experience from the end of the school year. And my hope is that through some of these sessions, you'll maybe find some ideas or new perspectives to take on distance learning during next year. Unfortunately, none of us knows what next year is going to look like at this moment. So this is kind of a group brainstorming / therapy session, so no one feels so alone as we did during that time, possibly. I will post again in the chat a link to the handout so you can see that, and the slides and the handout will be available afterwards along with a recording of this meeting. So if folks have missed it and you see that somewhere on social media or something, let them know that that will be available here in a day or two. And if you have any questions throughout the session, you can put them in the chat or save them up until the end, and Ashlynn will have time for questions. So just keep those in mind as we're going along. And our presenter today is Ashlynn Dickinson, and she is an elementary music educator at Cassidy School here in Oklahoma City, and she is going to take it away.
Yes, and before we get started, just so I know kind of who I'm talking to and where you're from, you can either give me a wave whenever I call your region, or you can put it in the chat. Do I have any Oklahoma City Metro teachers with us today? Any Oklahoma City, Edmond, Norman? Great. What about Tulsa, Northeast? Hey, Tulsans. What about my rural friends from Northwest Oklahoma, up in the Panhandle? My hometown is in the Northwest Oklahoma. Cool. Anyone from like Southeastern or Southwestern Oklahoma? Very good. Well, all you need to know about me is that I'm Ashlynn. I love teaching music. I love children, and I love collaborating with all of you all. And today I'm just going to share a little bit about my experience with remote learning. It may be similar to yours. It may be a little different, but that's okay. I hope that you can take at least one thing away. So we are elementary music people here. So I thought we would start with a song. And this was a way I started all of my live music lessons with my littles, with a little hello song. So if you are at home, you can wave hello as we're singing, and I'll make my way around the chat with some of your names. And if I say your name, you can give me a big extra wave. Hello, how are you? Hello, how are you? Hello, how are you? How are you today? Hello, Kathy. Hello, Cheryl. Hello, Karen. Hello, Sarah and Travis. Hello, Jennifer. Hello, Elizabeth. Hello, Martha. Hello, Regina and Lisa. So I always start with a hello song in my primary classes, but I thought it was particularly important during remote learning because our children were at home with their family, and they weren't being greeted by their family or friends outside of their house. And I thought how nice for us to start by greeting and for them to hear their name from somebody besides their grandma or their mom or their brother or sister. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen. Like Elizabeth said, I teach at Cassidy School in Oklahoma City, and I teach 1st through 4th grade students at my school. And first, I wanted to start with some live lesson classroom procedures. This can be applied to if you're doing Zoom meetings, Google Meets, or GoToMeetings. I'll say that our school started with Google Meets, and then we went to GoToMeetings in our 2.0 remote learning format. So this is really important. Teachers need to be the first ones on and the last ones off. That way they can, just like you greet your students at the door and you say goodbye to them, have students enter the meeting muted, which you guys are pros at. And then also, we would encourage our students to find their creative think space. This would not be rolling out of bed and popping on GoToMeeting or jumping on the trampoline, but a space where they can focus, they can be at their screen and still have some space to move around, especially during music class. And if you were curious where the Hello song came from, it came from Joe Kirk's book, Lullabies to Circle Games. Also, remember to reinforce digital citizenship skills. That means appropriate ways to use the chat feature. You can also, maybe you'll consider turning off the chat feature until you lay those procedures out for them, which would be probably smart. Just the using appropriate screen names. Unless you'll be getting things like Boomer Sooner 1 2 3 instead of their name. So just talking to them about important ways to use their screen names, and also just online meeting etiquette. Another thing that I would encourage you to do in our class, so much of what we do and interact with our students is organic because we're in the same space. It's really hard when you're doing live lessons to kind of get a temperature for the room. So I would encourage to come up with some nonverbal classroom communication. And we're actually going to practice these right here. These are some of the ones that the art teacher and I came up with. So can everyone show me some jazz hands? If something's really exciting and fun, you can do jazz hands or maybe some happy hearts if something you love or it touches your heart. Or this was one I learned from one of our classroom teachers. She did hang 10 for if a student agreed. If somebody said something, they're like, oh yeah, me too, I feel that way. You can also have some student choice ideas. So I'm going to open it up now, and you can just raise your hand. If you have a nonverbal classroom communication you'd like to add to our meeting today, go ahead and raise your hand and you can unmute and share. Anyone have any ideas that they'd like to add? I'm kind of going through, you seeing any hands up? Well, one that somebody came up with on Tuesday was raise the roof. So can we add raise the roof if something makes you excited? So feel free to throw those up during any time during our presentation. Also, a helpful tip would be to develop school-wide procedures for live lessons. Students are going to be coming in and out of different live lessons if that's the case at your school. And it's just really important for them to understand what it looks like in that there's not different procedures across the board. So this could be like just like PBIS or Great Expectations, having those common procedures. So I wanted to share a little bit about my experience during remote learning this spring, just so you know where I'm coming from. This was our school's mantra throughout remote learning. Our administrators often said, we're building a plane while flying. You guys can raise your hand. Did you feel that way at all during remote learning? I know that I did. There was a lot going on, and I like to be very methodical before I put things into motion, but there was no time for that. You just had to come up with it, put it out there, and just see where it goes. Throughout the presentation, I have these little tech tips. Something I learned during remote learning was this site called Unsplash, which is where you can find freely usable images or copyright-free images to use in your presentations. So if you see any images, they're probably from Unsplash. So that's just a little tip to share. At my school, our students had one-to-one devices, which I know was a huge blessing. So that changed what our expectations looked like for our students. They either had iPads or Chromebooks or used personal devices. If they didn't have a device at home, especially for sibling groups, our school provided those to them. Lower division students were encouraged but not required to participate in remote learning, but the content was out there. They did do a morning meeting, and that counted as their attendance for the day. So I'm just curious, raise your hand if you put out paper and pencil packets to your student. Was that an expectation? What about, did anyone put out some choice boards that was just very broad for their students to complete? Very good. Did anyone do live sessions with their students? Very good. Anybody else with that you use Seesaw or Google Classroom or Canvas for your platforms? Cool, great. So we're going to be talking about a few of those today. This was also the expectations. Our students had 3 to 4 hours of instruction, in particular in the morning. And then we had 5 different specials counting PE. So that is unique to a lot of schools. So that kind of changed the amount of work that we put out for our students, because it was a lot for our students to go through. At my school, we have art, Bible/computer, Spanish and music, plus PE. So a lot of schools, you probably have music and PE, or music, art, and PE is probably the case for most of you. So for our learning platforms, our school has the school license for Seesaw. There's different tiers of Seesaw, which you can look at. So first through third grade, use Seesaw, and then fourth grade utilized Google Classroom. Whenever I was thinking back to the tools that I used during remote learning, these were some of the things that came in my toolbox that I used often. I used a stylus for my iPad for Explain Everything. Having a iPhone tripod was really helpful for videos. My phone, no matter what kind of phone you have, it's a great tool for remote learning as well. And I also used a blue microphone, USB microphone, to help with the quality of my screencasting. And I also utilized my Bose Sound Dock quite a bit for live lessons or for video lessons. If you were looking for me in March, I'm sure this may look like some of your guys' setup too, but this was my home classroom most of the time from March to May. I had my computers up, my ukulele, and you know, it was nice because our furry friends got to be at home with us, so that was a plus during remote learning. So that's my dog Copper. He was at my feet most of the time during remote learning. I'm going to be sharing a lot with you about different tools and techie things that might be overwhelming for you, but this is really important to remember. The best tool is you. The students want to interact with you. So no matter what you do at the end of the day, if you're trying all these techie tools and things, just remember the most important thing is that the students want to see you, they want to hear you, they want to make music with you. So that's the most important thing. These were the top 3 teaching tools that I used throughout my time of remote learning: Screencastify, iMovie, and Acapella. And throughout, we're gonna look, just get a little taste of each of those today and different ideas of how you can use those. And at the end, I would love to hear how maybe you use these, or if you have some tools that worked well for you. When I was doing my remote learning content, I was trying to think of words that would encapsulate what I felt was important for my students. So I wanted to keep things familiar, whether that was using platforms that they were already familiar with or familiar songs and games that made them feel back at home, even when they were at their home and away from their friends. I wanted to keep it fun, and I also wanted to throw in things that were fresh and maybe different than we would normally do in the classroom. So familiar, fun, and fresh. You'll hear that a lot throughout our time today. So I wanted to show you, we're going to go back in time to March, and our school, they tasked us with sending out a welcome message before we started remote learning. So it could be just a letter to students, just a quick little video. Well, I wanted to start off with some singing and a song. And I don't know about you, but back in March, I had a lot of questions that hit me at once. I was feeling unsure, I was uncomfortable about some things, and I knew that our students and their families were also feeling that way. So I found this song and story, and I thought this is a great way to open up our remote learning time together. So I took Every Little Thing based on the song 3 Little Birds by Bob Marley and posted it to the students' Seesaw. So this is what it looked like, their welcome message: sweet musical moments, every little thing. And these were the tools that I used to make that happen for our students. So it's amazing, it's truly amazing, all of the different tools that you can use just for one lesson, just like in the classroom. So we'll take a look at this. I used QuickTime Player for the video recording. Google Slides is my jam. I use it so much in the classroom, even for remote learning, to make visuals for our students. Screencastify, which is a free screencast program. Also, I learned this from a teacher during remote learning. I used to use Genius app on my phone to scan in PDFs or images, but you can actually, if you have an iOS, you can scan in images and send them directly to your email through Notes, which was something that I learned. So that's a little tip. And then Spotify for the Bob Marley track. And then of course, Seesaw and Google Classroom is where I posted those things. So if I was to look in my Google Drive before I sent it to students, all of these elements were there. But I made basically a digital choice board for them to click on these options. And that's what you have right there and for the end product. And we'll look a little bit more at Seesaw in just a moment. But first, let's look at Screencastify. Raise your hand if you've ever done some screencasting for lessons before, or for demos. Anyone familiar with screencasting? Well, I didn't either until March, and it's something that I learned very quickly, and it's very simple to use, and it's a great, great tool for music lessons. So, screencasting is a digital recording of a computer screen, often containing audio or video narration. If you're a Google Drive person, it's really great because it saves those videos directly to a Google Drive folder for you to access, which is wonderful. Some ways that you can use screencasting in virtual music lessons, or even just during the regular school year: you can share song tales or maybe stories. You can do video lessons with visuals from Google Slides, video announcements for your students. You can send instructions for an assignment, like, students, this is what I'd like you to do on this assignment, and do a little demo. And then also for the future, I thought this is a great tool for subplans if you're wanting to send some demos to your students. This is a quick little tip, something that I learned. Whenever I was wanting to share videos with students, these 3 steps made it easy for students. That way they didn't have to have a password to access, like, my Google Drive, and it wasn't on YouTube with ads and all of those things. So this would be my suggestion if you were to make a screencast for your students, and a nice way to share with them. Step 1, you're going to create your content on Screencastify, and you'll open it up in your Google Doc folder. Then you'll simply just send that to a YouTube link, your YouTube channel. You'll mark it as unlisted, which is important. That way it doesn't pop up when somebody looks up Bob Marley and then your video pops up. You want to keep it private. And then once you've put it on your YouTube channel, you simply take that link and post it to safeyoutube.net. This is important because it's ad-free, it's safe sharing for students, and it basically takes them to just one screen. They can't click on the sidebars anywhere else. It takes them simply to that video. Another nice thing about Safe YouTube Link is that you can see how many views your video has received, just like on YouTube. So I can see if 3 people have looked at the video or 50 people. It's great to kind of keep track of student engagement. So those 3 steps really helpful for sharing videos. So here is an example of one of my very first screencasts for my first grade students. We were oh so close to learning half note in first grade, and one of my favorite ways to practice that with them and prepare is through the story Click Clack Moo. Something that's important during remote learning would be to reach out to authors for their permission. So I actually emailed Doreen Cronin directly and asked for permission to use her story, and publishers and authors are so gracious to share. So here's a little example of Click Clack Moo with a screencast. Whoops.
I would like to share with you the story, Click Clack Moo, Cows That Type. But first, I want you to imagine the world before cell phones and computers. How in the world would people communicate with one another? Well, one way they would communicate was by typing letters on a typewriter and then mailing or delivering that letter to a friend. The typewriter was invented in 1867. That was 153 years ago. And this is what a typewriter sounds like. In today's story, the cows, they type letters to Farmer Brown, and we are going to be the sound, the typewriter, and this is how we're going to do it. I have my zester from the kitchen and a spatula, and I can make the rhythm sound like this. Click, clack, moo, click, clack, moo, clickety, clack, moo. I can also make the rhythm sound with a highlighter and a pen. Click, clack, moo, click, clack, moo, clickety, clack, moo. I want you to think, what can you use to make the rhythm sound?
So that's just a little taste of that. And I go on to read this story. Another little tip, I wanted to make this story more interesting. If you use the app Novel Effect, it uses voice recognition to many, many popular children's stories, and it creates a soundtrack for you to read along with. So students love that, and they have one for Click clack, moo. So we're going to take a closer look at Screencastify and how you can do that. If you look at my screen in the top right-hand corner, Screencastify, to access it, it's through a Google Chrome extension, and then you download it to your computer. It is free. If you would like the extended version, it does cost, but from my research and from what our tech people at school said, the shorter the video, the better. You don't want your videos to go above 5 minutes. And for the free version of Screencastify, it's a 5-minute max. That's perfect for me. It meets my needs. So in the top right-hand corner, here's my Screencastify little icon, and it's thinking. And whenever you have everything ready to screencast, you just click on it, and then you can choose, do you want it just to film your desktop, or do you want to add in your webcam? You can choose those two options, and then just press record. It does a little 1, 2, 3, and then it records. You can also trim off the beginning and the end of your screencast if you want to kind of give yourself some space. You can always go in and edit the beginning and the end. So you can also see, let me move that out of the way. You can go in it, you have your recordings all in one place. So you can see all of my different recordings from screencasting. And I had not used this before remote learning. So I would say this was a great tool for me, and it worked well for my students. So that's just a little bit about Screencastify. In your handout, I included 2 little quick videos to get you started if you would like to explore that on your own after. So, digital choice boards. I know that some of you guys said that you did digital choice boards. There's not a right or wrong way to do it. There's lots of ways that you can use these to encourage students to make music at home, and I wanted to show you just a few. But before I do, there's some questions to consider. Are students required to submit a response from your choice board? So that will also depend on what you put on the choice board. So are they going to show pictures, videos, drawings, seesaw templates, or maybe they're going to use Flipgrid, which I'll talk about a little later? Or are these optional extensions? Do you have to keep track of these extensions if they're responding? Also, how many activities are you expected to post a week? Are you just expected to post 1 activity, or are you expected to have 3 to 5 choices? Is there a time limit? Also, just remembering how many specials are at your school. That will dictate possibly how long the expectations are. At my school during our 1.0 expectations, we divided up our choice boards and all of our specials posted on a separate day. So on Monday, we had Musical Mondays, and I would post by 9 a.m. and the students would have all week to engage with those activities on the choice board. Again, participation was not required, but it was strongly encouraged. So this is an example of the first grade digital choice board for week 1. It says week 2, but week 1 and 2 is when we started. So I started with something familiar. They love the song Naughty Kitty Cat, and it made them so happy to see our little furry friend. I did the click clack moo story and rhythm, some rhythm practice with click clack moo, and just like at school, I ended with a story. And then I also included a screencast of the seesaw instructions for the template that I wanted them to do. That way it gave them a step-by-step instruction. Another way you could do choice boards would be song specific. I wanted to leave my students a little lullaby, so I read them the beautiful song in storybook Moon River. And then I sang it to them on my ukulele. And then I included 2 different artists for them to check out their versions of Moon River. J.J. Heller is a living artist from Nashville. And then of course, Louis Armstrong. And I also included the lyrics for them here. These are all live links that they could click on. They just clicked on the picture and it took them where they needed to go. So it looks a lot nicer than having a bunch of links on there. And it's also user-friendly for our younger students. This was a response that I received after Moon River. The student said, "The Moon River makes me feel tired." And there they are sleeping on a cloud. Another way that you could use digital choice boards would be through including your school song or your fight song. Raise your hand, do any of you guys have a school song that is like a unifying song at your school? Well, I thought at the beginning of remote learning, we feel so far away from one another and we want to feel like we're still part of a community. So I put out our fight song for our students to sing, which was wonderful. So I sang it on my ukulele. I included the melody for my piano students at home. And then I also included the ukulele chords for my students that play ukulele. So I wanted to show you a quick little demo of a response that I got back from one of my extremely sweet, shy third graders. So that made me think, you know, for those students that may not feel comfortable singing in class, flip it, put it on Flipgrid and have them record them singing on Seesaw or whatever format you're using. It's a really great way for them to share their voice. And I think you'll see why from this third grader.
Cassidy forever, firm together stand, comrades true and faithful, steadily we'll face the world so fearlessly, and through the years to follow, we'll pledge our loyalty. For Cassidy School with all our might, we'll fight for victory. Fight, fight, fight!
Isn't that sweet? So she probably would have never done that in class, but she felt comfortable doing that on Seesaw. I had students singing in their bedrooms, putting on their Cassidy cheerleading uniforms and football jerseys. They were proud. They felt like they were back at school. So I would encourage you to find just a song that's a unifying song for your students. So Seesaw. I am a huge Seesaw person. You know, it's funny though. My growth plan this fall was Seesaw, and I wasn't exactly where I needed to be. Nothing like being thrown into remote learning to really put you on track to reaching your goals. So I'm thankful for that. So Seesaw is an online learning journal. Like I said, there's different tiers. There's free versions and then school-wide subscriptions. That are really great to use for student engagement at home and at school. So I wanted to show you some possibilities. Remember Click Clack Moo, I got out my cheese grater? Well, all of those funny things that we do at home are to encourage our students to make music. And here's one of my first graders.
Click, clap, moo. Click, clap.
So looks like she went and rummaged through her kitchen for some instruments, which was great. On Seesaw, students can also practice writing rhythms. Here's one of my first graders writing using quarter notes, eighth notes, and quarter rest, naughty kitty cat. Again, Google Slides, it's a great way to make templates for your students. And here's a student response singing Naughty Kitty Cat. And this also made me think, we do not know what singing is going to look like exactly in our schools next year. Well, what if you prepare the song at school and then you flip it and you post an activity on Seesaw and then they can sing at home? So you can do this in so many different ways. And here's one of my first graders singing so sweetly.
Naughty kitty cat, why did you do that? You have butter on your whiskers, naughty kitty cat. Thank you for watching, Miss Dickinson. Bye.
Did you hear those consonants? She was like right on it. You can also leave teacher responses, which is a great way to communicate with your students. You can do typed messages, or you can also record your voice. So there you see me responding to a student in third grade and some first grade singing. You can also, this is part of the premium subscription, you can also add skills. So we're always wanting ways to advocate for a program and show that we're more than just singing and dancing, but children are learning real, meaningful skills. So you can add skills to different activities and tag those, and then you can grade them using a 4, 3, 2, 1 scale or whatever scale your school uses. You can dictate how many stars there are, which is great. You can also look at how many students in each class have responded to a specific activity on Seesaw. So if you see here, I have 2 students that I'm waiting on responses for this activity. Each class has a sample student. That's basically like your teacher's sandbox that you can post different activities to try, and it just goes to that sample student, which is a nice little safeguard. Something I also learned later on in remote learning, I wish I would have known at the beginning, were about seesaw icons. So these are children-friendly icons that match exactly what the prompts are on these seesaw templates for them to respond. So you can get on the seesaw site and look these up, and it's a nice little PDF with little codes to make these lovely icons for your instructions. You can also communicate through Seesaw. So this was a little note I sent out to our third graders. We were scheduled to do our big third grade production in May, which obviously that did not happen. So I was able to send out a little letter to them, letting them know the tentative plan for the year. So let's take a little closer look at Seesaw. I wanted to show you the different possibilities you have with Seesaw. You can have there's different levels. There's My Library, School, and Community. My Library is where you can put all of your different activities that you've created. If you want to get specific, you can put it by grade, first grade, and then you can go down here to music. And then all of my first grade music activities pop up. The second level, school. You can post things to just your school library, and then I can see all of the different teachers at my school, all of their different activities, and look them up by grade level and subject. Then the biggest tier, there's a Seesaw community library. So if you're looking for, say, a third grade music activity, I can click third grade and then go down to music. And then all of these different options pop up, and then you can add it to your library, which is really great. It's just like anything else, though, like on TPT or anything else on the web, there's really great resources and resources that may not fit your needs or may not work well for you. So just take the time to look through those. This is what the screen looks like if you're adding an activity on Seesaw. You simply write in the activity name. So we'll say music, activity. Then you type in the instructions. This is where you could use those little icons to put use the different icons for video or writing tools. For my young children, I would always add a voice instruction there so that they didn't have to read, but they could listen to the instructions. This is where you would add your digital choice board or whatever media you're wanting them to interact with. The template is where they can share their response, just like with the writing or the singing. And then down here, you can tag the skills. So you see all of my different music skills. They're in with all of the different subjects, but you could look it up by subject as well. So that's just a little bit about Seesaw. That's like a whole other webinar in itself, but I wanted to at least give you a little taste of that. So meeting the needs of all of our students looked different for each grade level. Fourth grade was not using Seesaw, they were using Google Classroom, and also fourth grade was getting ready for their middle division ensembles. The last time I saw my fourth graders, we were on stage for their big program right before spring break. So we had been preparing for our program most of the, through January to March. So it was time to really focus on treble clef skills and getting them ready for their ensembles. So that made their spring during remote learning look a little different. Raise your hand again. How many Google Classroom people do we have here? Any Google Classroom? Well, there's lots of different ways that you can use Google Classroom for your students. This is an example of one of their choice boards. You see we were working on treble clef. I was having them write an EGBDF story. We practiced some melody with high-low chickalo, and my sweet husband was so kind and helped me demo the clapping game for high-low chickalo, so he had major brownie points for that. So one way that I met the needs for the fourth graders, it's harder to do videos or do writing examples on Google Classroom, so I set up a Flipgrid specifically for video submissions, and that worked really well for my students. So here's an example of something you can do with Google Slides and a screencast. I went through and we reviewed the lines and spaces and all the rules, and then I built words for them and demoed the process there. And then I turned around and I sent them a Google form and just had them do simple responses. This was their engagement, showing me that they did the work. So use your knowledge of the treble clef to spell their mystery words. And they simply typed in the answer. And there was about 3 or 4 other questions for them to do that day. I had them do a little EGBDF story. And here's one of my 4th graders. He was very creative. Every gambler bets dollars foolishly was his EGBDF story. And I made a copy for each student, and then they simply turned it in on Google Classroom. They could either print it off and draw, or they just searched Google Images and they put images to help illustrate their story. Something that we missed out on because we were not in our physical location was our 4th graders getting to hear from their new fine arts teachers. So we set up a go-to meeting for them where the parents and the students were invited to hear directly from our band, choir, and strings teachers, as well as our drama teacher. And this was just a really great way to continue engaging them and keeping the conversation going and educating them about their options. A way that you can use Google Forms in Google Classroom was this way. I sent out a little survey about ensembles, and then that asked them what ensemble they were interested in or what instrument they were wanting to play in that specific ensemble. And then I turned around and sent that information to our ensemble directors. So lots of different possibilities. Another way that 4th grade was different than the others was that basically they have a graduation at the end of the year called Closing Chapel, and it was always a tradition to sing one final song together. So it was really sad that we didn't get to do this. So I went down the journey of the virtual choir, which I was quite scared of, if I'm being honest, but these were the tools that I used to make it happen. I am not a sound technician. Whenever I put it together, I was praying, just give me three students that I can use their clips to put it together. And I had 15 that I could use to put the virtual choir together. So instead of doing a video for the virtual choir, I simply had them send their wish to me. And so I compiled little pictures and created a little slideshow as their audio was going. I love this one. I wish you resilience. Isn't that the truth from this spring? What a great heart. And we sang something familiar. Again, I didn't want to spend a lot of time teaching it, but we sang a familiar canon, an Irish blessing, which worked really well for this purpose. I sent them a nice little Google doc with very simple but thorough instructions. So the 3 things they needed to do this was headphones, a recording device on a phone, and their computer. I put it all together like a tiered cake on GarageBand. And then we had our final product. I put it into iMovie and combined the audio and the visual, and we had our first ever 4th grade virtual choir. So I don't know about you, but many things worked in remote learning, but we also had to evaluate what was working well for students, parents, and teachers. So enter remote learning 2.0. I don't know if any of you guys had to kind of shift gears in the middle of it, but I know that we did for sure. So if you look at the specials side, really what this meant for us was that we were no longer going to do special specific choice boards, but we were going to do a combined choice board 1 time a week. And then we would be doing 30-minute live music classes once a week with our students. That would be made up of 2 homerooms at a time, so we would have a max of 34 students. Again, participation was optional. So remember those little procedures I talked about at the beginning? This is when those came into play during our live lessons, which made it really important. I did keep track of engagement throughout all of remote learning. So you can see week 4, we started go-to meetings, our live lessons. So at that point, I was just taking attendance basically. Week 2 and 3, I was keeping track of who was engaging with the online content. The green meant that they understood it, they did the template correctly. Orange was maybe they didn't understand it, or they weren't sure what to do, or maybe my instructions weren't very clear and I need to go back and evaluate those. You can also see week 7, we didn't have a meeting because of tech issues. I put that in there because it's important just to keep it real, and things happen and it's okay. So this is what live music classes looked like with a combined choice board. This was our combined specials choice board. So basically we each had a little box to put in whatever content we wanted. So you see everything is pared down a lot, but I tried to keep it meaningful and fresh and engaging and still working on skills. So here for first grade, we did a little sidewalk chalk rhythm, and I sent a video of me demoing that outside on my outside in my backyard. And then I sent a little a cappella video of Here Comes a Video to hopefully inspire them to sing and play at home. This is what our specials live schedule looked like. On Monday, I had a busy afternoon of teaching live lessons, one after the other, from 12:35 to 3 o'clock. I had 5 different live sessions. So if you see from 12:35 to 1, the art and music teacher, we were together in the same live session. So that meant that we each had about, ideally, we would have had longer, but we had about 10 to 12 minutes to do a little live snippet of a lesson. So it was fast and furious. So next year, something I would advocate for, I like being combined with another teacher for many reasons, for tech reasons, just to have another person in the room, but also I would advocate for having 45 minutes so that we could have a little bit more time. And then Wednesday was basically the same thing with just 3 classes. We would post the link to their Google Classroom or Seesaw the day of. That way it was easy one-click access so they could meet us in our virtual music and art room. In Flipgrid, 4th grade, like I said earlier, it was hard for them to respond to the material through video using Google Classroom. So I knew that they were familiar with Flipgrid with their 4th grade homeroom attendance. So we decided to use it for specials. So it is completely 100% free for educators, and it's a wonderful tool. So here are some ways that you can use it in music lessons. Students can share performances of them singing and playing. I had one student that went rogue and she sent 4 videos of her singing. It became like a talent show for her, which was fine. That's great. She was sharing music. You can create they could create how-to videos. They can submit videos of them thinking through a process through making thinking visible. Maybe you send them on a scavenger hunt in their house to find musical objects or objects that have certain rhythmic values. Maybe you host a student talent show on there. And then also you can create mixtapes, which is basically like a highlight reel of all of the student video responses. And then you can share that out to students, families, and teachers. Again, we would post the Flipgrid to the Google Classroom directly with their lesson for the week, which was great. And the nice thing about Flipgrid and Google Classroom is that they talk nicely together. They work together. You can actually post directly from Flipgrid to Google Classroom from the Flipgrid app, which is really nice. Here you see the student responses for that week. And this is what the teacher view looks like. Our students do not have email. If they did, I could send them email feedback. But in this case, I could just type little messages to them. So this was 2 students doing Hilo Chickalo at home. Another tech tool I wanted to show you, I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but I just hope you get little sprinkles of ideas and it encourages you to create some lessons for your students. Something that worked well for me was Explain Everything. And all I needed was my iPad and a stylus to make this happen. It's an easy to use design screencasting tool that you can basically in real time type, draw, and interact with the whiteboard tool. Ways that you could use this in a music lesson would be model how to write a rhythm or melody on the staff, or in my case, I modeled how to write a treble clef. And here is an example of that right here.
Gorillas buy delightful Fritos. So let's learn how to draw a treble clef. We always are going to start at the bottom, go to the top, and then there are some steps in between. And those steps are this. First step, we're going to start at the bottom and make a hook going all the way up to the top, noticing how our line is above the staff. Next step, we're going to stop at the 4th line by making a capital D, which is interesting because the 4th line on the treble clef is D. So we're going to make a capital letter D. Next, we're going to go to the bottom line as our ending point, but we're going to see our way to the bottom. The next step is what I like to call the snail, and we do not want our snail to go above the third line. Our snail is going to eventually curl around the second line like this, because remember the treble clef is called the G clef, which is on the second line. So here's the snail. We're going to snail up to the third line, wrap around the second line, G clef. Again, we have our hook going up, fourth line D, see your way to the bottom, snail up to the third line, wrap around to the second line, G clef.
It's really funny when we're together, I see and hear the students doing those steps. So it's just, I have found that that's a great reminder for them. Another tool that I used often during remote learning is the app Acapella. And you can make rounds with yourself or you can collaborate with others to do that. Ways that I used it the most was through folk songs with simple accompaniments or adding ostinati patterns. You can do echo songs. I did an echo song for my littles with a bear puppet and a frog to show I met a bear, which was great. Something to keep in mind if you use it with older students, they have to be 13 years or older to use it. It is a free app on iOS or Android devices, but you can pay for an updated version. I did the free trial for a month and then I just made sure to cancel it. I think it's about $10 a month. It's a great app, but for me, the free version worked pretty well. So what you need to make an acapella video is a smartphone, headphones, and an iPhone tripod is what I use to help make this possible. So here's an example that I used for my littles using Charlie Over the Ocean.
Charlie over the ocean, Charlie over the ocean, Charlie over the sea, Charlie over the sea. Charlie caught a clownfish, Charlie caught a clownfish. You can't catch me, you can't catch me. Charlie over the ocean, Charlie over the ocean, Charlie over the sea, Charlie over the sea. Charlie caught an octopus, Charlie caught an octopus. You can't catch me, you can't catch me.
So it goes on with the different sea creatures. So I then flipped and I used this song during a live lesson with my littles, and we improvised different sea creatures that could be caught through echo singing. I found that echo singing could be done pretty successfully with a large group of students, with everyone muted, or maybe just asking one student to unmute and be your echo, and that worked well for me. So I'd like to share a video that I have permission from the family to share with you. This was one of my first graders, and she decided she'd be very creative with what she caught in her net. And you'll hear her mother, her sister, and her baby sister in this video.
And go.
Grace over the ocean,
Grace over the ocean,
Grace over the sea.
Grace over the sea.
Grace caught a baby,
Grace caught a baby.
can't catch me.
Can't catch me. Oh, I give it to Zoe.
So something sweet, some sweet moments that happened during remote learning was just seeing and hearing videos and pictures of families making music together. So that definitely touched my heart when I saw my students doing that. So I know we all have big question marks about what fall 2020 is going to look like. And I know at my school, things aren't set in stone yet. We're still figuring things out, and I'm sure it's the same for you all. But if I was to choose two platforms for 2020, I would still use Seesaw and Google Classroom. I'm familiar with them now, and I feel like they worked well for our students, and it's something that they're familiar with before remote learning, and I know that they can hop right back into them in the fall if needed. So things to keep in mind with introducing new material. Basically, if you think about it, March to May, if you're putting content out there, not everyone was engaging with that content. So we have to remember to keep review at the center of everything at the beginning of the year. Basically, things that I left off with at the end of February, early March, we'll review, and then we'll just pick up the scope and sequence where we left off. So we're going to be a little off from the traditional year, but that's okay. Also, just remember to keep the idea of building digital citizenship skills into your beginning of the year procedure, so that if we do have to go back into remote learning, the students are familiar with the platforms you want them to use. They're familiar with what music looks like on those platforms. So I know that that's something that I'm going to be keeping in mind in August. When I think about assessment school tools, it's dependent on what the school year is going to really look like. Are we going to have a traditional setting with social distancing? Is it going to be remote learning, or is it going to be a hybrid and mixture of both? The assessment tools that I plan on using for next year can include the Seesaw template, using Flipgrid videos, and then also continuing to use Google Slide templates for student responses. So just remember, begin the year by implementing assessment tools that can be used for both remote and hybrid teaching situations. I know I put that in red for me too, because that's something I'm really going to have to keep in mind. So I know that the grading expectations looks differently from everyone, but I just wanted to share you kind of where we were at this spring. Traditionally, in the spring semester, we have 3 layers of content assessment that we do. We have music skills for each of our students, 1st through 4th grade, which is unique. Instead of just giving one S, we give an S for like rhythmic, melodic, and social skills, different things. I also normally give individual comments for 2nd and 3rd graders in the spring. And then I do a simple summary paragraph of what we learned this spring. Because of our teaching situation, this was not conducive to being equitable to all students, because not everyone engaged in remote learning. And also it just looked different. It felt different. We weren't together. So this spring, we just did a summary paragraph of the semester for each grade level. And that seemed to be fair for both the teachers and for the students this year. So recommendations for next year. So what's next? What's now? Take advantage of all the PD opportunities. There's so much out there, and you're taking advantage of one right now. If you're in a district with other teachers, brainstorm with them, come up with a game plan, figure out ideas, share resources, divide and conquer. Also, just brainstorm the following. What types of activities can you continue to use in your classroom? What works in all different settings? What can you still use? Or maybe what activities do you like and you enjoy and need to be modified for social distancing? And also, what supplies do you need for your students to be successful? Those are all ideas that are swirling in my mind right now. And then just always remember to be flexible, because we're going to be asked to do things that are out of our comfort zone or different, but also be an advocate for your program. So be flexible with the schedule you're given, but always be an advocate for your program and for your students. So you all have my information, my email. You are welcome to email me anytime with questions or thoughts. If you want to brainstorm, or if you want to go more in depth about anything I shared with you today, I am happy to do so. So I thought now we could open it up to some questions. So if you have a question, just feel free to unmute, and I will do my best, or Elizabeth will do her best to answer your questions.
And you can also type it into the chat. We have one already. Which app did you use for the icons for the links?
Oh, okay. I can actually, like in my choice boards, I believe, I can show you that right now. I think I understand what you're asking. Let me go right here to my choice board. So all this is basically, when I think about digital choice boards, oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Let me go back. Sorry about that. And you can tell me if this answers your question, but I think it will. So when I think of digital choice boards, I think of them as like a digital scrapbook. You're basically layering things on top of themselves. So all this is an image of the screencast that I did. I just took a little snippet of it, and then I came up here and I clicked on the link of the video that I wanted to input, and then I went up to link and I linked it there, and I click apply, and then when the students click on it, it's like a hyperlink, and it takes them directly to that screencast or the YouTube video that I want them to go to. So it wasn't a specific app, but I basically created them. Or I looked up a picture of the book because, and then I linked the link to that picture. I think that answers your question, but that's how I did that.
Great. Other questions? You can type them in the chat or unmute. One thing I wanted to share with everyone while you're thinking of questions is your districts might have had very limited connectivity this past year, just because students, they might have had devices at home, but of course they didn't have internet. And Superintendent Hoffmeister is really concerned about that and trying to get money to communities and connect students with their schools. So I know she's been helping get funds to get physical internet installed in homes, but also they bought or are in the process of purchasing 50,000 Wi-Fi hotspots that will be distributed to schools based on student need, so that maybe those students who didn't have any connectivity at home this past year will have a better chance of being able to hook up to internet this next year if you are going to distance learning at some point. So things might be better and you might be able to take advantage of these platforms if you were stuck doing paper packets this spring.
I have a couple of questions. One, Elizabeth, for you is, I know that everybody's putting together these little packets, and I see a lot of this online that everybody's, what are you going to have in your packet for your music students and all of that? Is any of the funding that we're getting going to be funneled into our schools for that specifically? Or do you have any idea what that's going to look like for our schools?
Are you meaning the supply kits that some music teachers are giving to kids? Yeah, if you need to purchase anything that is outside the realm of your normal teaching because of COVID, then the CARES Act funding can cover that. So your school district should be supplying you with masks, gloves, disinfectant, wipes, all of that, so you can take care of things in your room. You shouldn't have to use your classroom budget or go out and buy a whole bunch of Clorox wipes on your own. That should be supplied by your school. And then, yeah, if you want to do some sort of kits, then your school could cover that with CARES Act funding. Now, whether they will or not, I'm not sure, because they might say, well, take the Clorox wipes and disinfect everything, and we'll just go that route instead of sharing kits. So it depends on your situation. But I know Visual Art is trying to think through the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. The other question that I had is for Ashlynn. Are all of the platforms that you're using, are those all free, or are you having to pay for any of those?
Our school pays for the Seesaw school subscription, and there's, like I said, there's different levels, and because we can input skills and all of those, that's like the premium. If you look online, it doesn't give you an exact quote for the school subscription. I know that it can be quite pricey, but I know there are free versions of Seesaw. Our school is a Google Classroom or a Google school, so Google Classroom was part of that subscription. I know that there's some schools that can use Google Classroom or they may not have access. I tried to keep everything free. Like I said, I kind of went around the acapella thing. I signed up for the subscription in April, and then I just closed it on May. This summer, I do want to play around with some different free options that I already have on my computer to make multi-level videos. I just didn't have time this spring to do that, and acapella made it so easy. So that was free. I'm trying to think of anything else that I might have paid for. Really, yeah, my phone and the apps on my computer, that is what I use. Google Slides, like I said, was my jam. I used that to make so many different visuals for students, and that was all free. And then I'm looking, does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Perfect. And then I see Rebecca asked, how did I start on Seesaw? How did I start developing my content? Well, I just really tried to think about where the students were. Just like with first grade, you saw a lot of half note preparation. I tried to think of activities that I wasn't presenting new skills, but I was having them practice those by preparing them. First grade was also so close to identifying So Me. So I didn't get to share with you today, but we did a lot of high-low practice with visuals and having them record high-low patterns on Seesaw. So I just really tried to think about where they were in their scope and sequence and then apply those to my content on Seesaw. Also, I feel like there's never enough time to explore instruments and instrument families. So that is a really easy thing to put out there for students. There's so many wonderful sites like DSO Kids that you can send them and they can explore the different instrument families. So I think starting week 2 or 3, I broke it down. In week 2, we looked at the string family and I just put that as different options for them to explore. The next week we did woodwinds. So content, and also it's okay to share content across grade levels and to level it up if needed. Work smarter, not harder, right? So that's okay to put things out there that go across grade level, but then also keep things that are grade specific. Oh, Jennifer asked, what stand did I use for my dock camera? I wanted to show this so bad. As you saw, I tried to throw so much at you. I can try to find it, but I call it the red arm thing. It's metal, it's heavy duty. And this was something that I really wish I would have had during remote learning, but I shared mine with a homeroom teacher because I knew she would be seeing the students more often. But I will say this really quickly. Ways that I will be using it in the future for live lessons if we have to go back to that. For one lesson, I set up little tiny finger puppets and we played circle games through our live lesson, and the students loved that. They were gathering their furry critters and playing circle games too, but the document camera would be great because I could use my iPad to basically act as a ladybug or a document camera and then send it through our Zoom, and that would be my screen. And so I could be manipulating things or playing games here for them to see in real time. So I will try to send that document camera link to you. Rebecca asks, what app did you use to make your grading tracker? The grading tracker, are you talking about whenever I was just basically checking for attendance and all of that? Is that what you're asking? Well, I can answer that. I just use Google Sheets. All it is Google Sheets, and then I applied the little check marks to it. So it was a free app again, something very simple.
Any other questions? Okay, well, if you think of something, interrupt me here, but I'm going to share one more thing before we leave. The OSDE has put out guidance for the start of the next school year, and you might have seen the phase 1 guidance. The fine arts section was real short and brief. That was on purpose. I didn't want to share anything that was going to commit us one way or the other, especially since we don't have the results yet from that national study that's being done about the air civilization and if singing and playing is safe or not. So I kept it real brief there, but we're going to have phase 2 guidance coming out in the middle of July. And I have folks from OKMEA and from Central Oklahoma ORF and Green Country ORF and the Kodai educators and a bunch of the different professional music organizations, and they're all contributing to this guidance. And so I know the other night I had a call with a few people and we went through things like, can you disinfect drums? Which instruments are good to recommend to disinfect? How do kids come in the room? What things can you do to space them? Can you dance? How do you do that? All those different sorts of things. So that guidance will come out in mid-July, and hopefully that will be really helpful to you as you think through what your plans are for the start of the school year. The study should be finished here, at least preliminary results, in a week or 2. So I know I'm really looking forward to that. I'm sure a lot of you are anxious as well to see what's happening. So Ashlynn, any closing thoughts?
No, just we're kind of going into uncharted territory again. I feel like we thought it would be finished in the spring, but it's not. But I just wish everyone luck. Like, reach out, like I said, to people in your district or people in neighboring communities, and we can get through this together and be creative together. And just remembering that, like I said, you're the best tool for all of the techie things, like just connecting with students and making music, and we'll be able to make music together again really soon. And that's going to be a really, really happy day.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you all for coming. The handout and the presentation and this video will be available on the Fine Arts website here in another day or two. So look for that. I will share it out on social media as well. Thank you, Ashlynn.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. See you next time.
Bye.
Okay.